We know, as Mr. Singh mentioned in the morning, that the Indian air conditioner market is poised for extremely rapid growth as the economy grows. Just this morning, the headlines in the paper were that the Sensex has crossed 30,000, and there was a big celebration. So the Indian economy is really booming, and the air conditioner market is also expected to grow substantially. Uh, the cooling requirement will grow faster than any other energy demand. Number of installed air conditioners is going up to 116 million in 2030. That is a 3x growth between 2020 and 2030. And other automobile air conditioning or foam sectors are showing varying degrees of growth, but growing fast as well. And this growth presents a huge opportunity for India in gaining energy efficiency benefits. Uh, Speaking of benefits, there are many of improving room air conditioner efficiency, of course, reducing the growth in energy demand. India is going to need all the energy it can use to power this substantial growth. And we had worked on a paper which talks about reducing the stress on India's energy grid. Cutting energy costs to the consumer. So Mr. Singh also highlighted that affordability of cooling is a big challenge. And I happen to work on environmental health as well, and this is an actual health issue in India with rising temperatures and heat waves becoming more frequent and severe, that people are dying because they don't have access to cooling. So that is a major challenge as well. Increasing the value of room air conditioner products. So studies and market data has shown that more efficient air conditioners bring more value to industry and manufacturers. So increasing the number of more efficient products that are available in the market will definitely be beneficial to the industry. And of course, achieving substantial low-cost reduction in greenhouse gas emissions for India, both direct and indirect emissions, moving to low GWP HFCs, as well as reducing the amount of power that needs to be generated to power those air conditioners. The facts are suggesting that India has an opportunity to mitigate both climate change and reap the benefits of energy efficiency. We already see 6 Indian room AC manufacturers initiating R22 phase out under HPMP2. They're considering HFC 32. Which gives them the opportunity to improve their components as well as design, leading to higher efficiency. One of the challenges is that the MLF currently does not fund energy efficiency upgrades, but in the last XCOM meeting, there was certain instructions given to the MLF, which I can talk about later in the presentation. Other manufacturers are phasing out R22 independently as well. So that opportunity to open up the air conditioning unit and change the unit to include energy efficiency improvements is a big opportunity. They can put efficient components, and we also know that inverter ACs, the share of inverter ACs in the room air conditioning market is really going up as well. Professor Agarwal briefly touched upon this as well, that the range of alternatives that are available for room air conditioners, 2 of which are highlighted here, R32 and R290, they offer superior efficiency, we've seen. This study, this slide is quite technical, but I'm going to go over it fast. This study from the Air Conditioning, Heating and Refrigeration Institute suggests that leading low GWP HFC alternatives are more energy efficient deterministically. So they've come out with that study as well. And of course, there is a big business case for energy efficiency, and we're talking about cost in this presentation. So energy efficiency is good, but who's going to pay for the cost of improving energy efficiency? Now, this is a difficult question, but I hope and I'm optimistic that with the industry leaders and the government leaders present in this room, we will be able to reach an answer together. So we know that R32 and R290 are inexpensive and not heavily patented alternatives. We also know that efficient refrigerants will allow cost savings in the rest of the room air conditioning sector system. My apologies. The incremental cost of improved components for refrigerant change or energy efficiency can be funded by the MLF for some period of time. And I will talk about those opportunities later. India, by continuing to engage with the Montreal Protocol, India has already been a leader in voicing that there is a need to acknowledge energy efficiency as India moves away and other countries move away from high GWP refrigerants. Energy efficiency is being recognized globally as an energy resource as well. So these are some ideas that I will be talking about as part of my presentation. So far, we know that little development or climate funding has been available to improve energy efficiency. The Paris Agreement of 2015 and the Kigali Amendment have raised the profile of energy efficiency, and we're also seeing that multilateral organizations or philanthropic organizations are showing more interest in funding energy efficiency. In the last EXCOM meeting, which was held in Montreal, the parties instructed the multilateral fund to develop cost guidelines associated with maintaining or enhancing the energy efficiency of low GWP or zero GWP replacement technologies while phasing down HFCs. The second clause is something that I will not read out because it's not applicable to India, but it basically suggests that the MLF was instructed from the parties to also provide funding for the service sector in countries to maintain energy efficiency in countries that have low HFC consumption. So some possible multilateral fund approaches to fund energy efficiency could be to fund enabling activities in India. For example, strengthening the coordination between the national ozone units and the national power ministry. So for example, this could mean building capacity or placing a person or a team in the ozone unit who coordinates with the Ministry of Power or the Bureau of Energy Efficiency to keep in mind energy efficiency improvements as we phase down HFCs. Supporting strengthening of minimum energy performance standards, so MEPS, as well as strengthening the labeling program. And of course, like Mr. Singh mentioned, developing government policies for bulk procurement and financial incentive programs as well. In terms of RAC conversions and servicing, the MLF could support energy efficiency upgrades, including energy efficiency as a possible incremental cost for funding during phase down of HFCs. If it can't be considered as an incremental cost, for example, right now the MLF is increasing its conversion cost threshold by 25% for HFC conversion in AC projects and 40% for foam projects. A similar bonus can be offered for energy efficiency as well. Some of the non-MLF linked approaches could be, for example, considering coordinating or collaborating with other funding sources or establishing a pipeline between the MLF and external funding sources like GEF or GCF or other climate funds to support energy efficiency alongside the MLF conversion projects, or domestically doing utility ratepayer programs or loans from green banks or multilateral organizations to incentivize sales of energy efficient room air conditioners. Here too, the EESL example is a big one, which is a bulk procurement to bring more efficient, more affordable air conditioners into the market. So with that, I'd like to end my presentation and look forward to a healthy debate on these ideas. These are mere suggestions, so I look forward to discussing them with everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaur. And the final presentation in this session comes from Dr. Philipson, who's going to talk about, who's the Director for Climate Change in SQ Consult, and she's going to tell us a little bit about financing NAMAs, and NAMAs are Nationally Appropriate Mitigation Actions, if I remember correctly, in the rack and cold chain sectors. Thank you.
Good morning. I hope it's still morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also to the host and the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. Maybe in the interest of full disclosure, or call it a confession, as Ms. Gauer was saying, I personally do not work on the area of the Montreal Protocol, but on the climate change area. And from that perspective, I've been asked to share some thoughts with you this morning on the possibilities of financing green cooling activities under the concept of NAMAs. And indeed, Mr. Owen was completely correct, but I can imagine that NAMAs is not a part of your everyday vocabulary for many of you. So I'll briefly start with going into what is a NAMA, what's the current status, before I turn to the financing and the green cooling aspects. NAMAs were introduced in the international climate change negotiations context, and specifically the discussions on international agreements beyond the Kyoto period. And it was adopted in the Bali Action Plan in 2007. And that plan that was to lead to an international agreement on commitments after 2012 had four main pillars. First pillar was ambitious emission reduction targets for developed countries. And for developing countries, the concept of NAMAs was introduced, nationally appropriate mitigation actions. So actions to address greenhouse gas emissions that were determined at the national level, appropriate for the national context, and that would be implemented with the necessary support provided by developed countries. And in that context of that support, third pillar of the Bali Action Plan was significantly scaled up, both financial and technical resources, and fourth, also a governance structure to deal with those resources. For those of you who have been following more the climate change discussions, some of this might sound familiar also in the context of the so-called nationally determined contributions, NDCs or INDCs, that have been used in the negotiations since 2015. In terms of the contributions of all countries involved in the negotiations for their commitments on, as of 2020. Similarity is that it is indeed also nationally determined. It's nationally determined by each of the countries. A big difference is that it's valid for all countries, so both developed countries and developing countries. And usually it's a bit bigger in scope as NAMAs, overall targets for the contributions that countries will make. Of course, they are linked to a certain extent. Work on NAMAs has been going on for quite a number of years in developing them, and that has informed the process of all developing countries to develop those national determined contributions. And in addition, also the NAMAs that have been developed will be a way to implement actions to achieve the nationally determined contributions. Now, more on what is a NAMA. And other than the name, that it's an action, mitigation action, so addressing emissions, and that it has to be nationally appropriate, there is not a common international definition. So almost by definition, countries can define themselves exactly what a NAMA is and how it fits within their national context. Over the years, basically sort of three types of NAMAs have emerged. And here I've shown a graph and some examples with different types differing in the degree of how aspirational or concrete they are. And also the level of detail that's involved, and combined with that also how transformational the NAMA is. Starting from the bottom end of this graph, you have NAMAs defined as a goal, often overall economic goal. For instance, an example, an emission limitation target or emission reduction target compared to a business as usual scenario for the economy as a whole. For instance, countries like Indonesia and